that you gave the team that I'm going to talk about in the Houston Texans crown too early, because I did pick this team to win the Super Bowl, and I'm not jumping off of that. I'm not jumping off of that. I still believe that they have an opportunity. But boy, CJ Stroud was going to be my MVP. That's no longer even an option because of the way that he's played. And it's not just about CJ Stroud, but I do want to take a look into CJ Stroud as it pertains to who he is this year versus who he was last year, because he caught a lot of teams by surprise. He came on the scene and he was electric. He was exciting. He gave that city life. But this year, it has not been the same when you look at the numbers of CJ Stroud. And it's, again, I'm not going to just say it's all about CJ Stroud, because he's had injuries up on his offensive line that play into the reasons why he's been bad. But those numbers, they're not great. They're not great when you have expectations to get to the Super Bowl, and that's what you were built to do this preseason with all the acquisitions. You got injuries galore right now at the receiver position and along your team. Like, I don't know, I would knock this team down a couple notches to where the Steelers, the Washington Commanders, and the Vikings are right now. I think they're a little too high.
So you're taking the team that you picked to go to the Super Bowl.
For right now, it's
moving them down to the can't win the Super Bowl.
Not because of the title.
You like the title of that tier.
Wilds is not so because of the title of
Greg
the
did. Greg, let me give. Hold on.
Bail on his pick.
I got to give Greg
I think
credit.
he's bailing, Nick.
He's bail on his pick.
No, he's not.
Halfway through the season, sound like he's bailing.
Greg has gotten very, very good with something that, if I may say so myself, I think I'm the single best in the world at, which is having like a throwaway line in the preface of your statement that actually then makes sure you don't contradict anything. And so if someone tries to call you on it, you can be like, no, I said. Greg said, and it didn't really make sense. He was like, I don't love the name of that tier with the Steelers and Washington and whoever else. And then he launched into his thing because he knew he was going to drop Houston down there, and he wants to say they can still win the Super Bowl. Greg, I doff my proverbial cap to you, sir. That was a great job.
Bailing on your pick. From where we sit, that's called bailing on your pick.
I'm not bailing.
I think he dropped them to like the 14th best team in the league.
Yeah, it means
right now, I am honest. I am real. Right now,
Greg,
they are not that great.
You can be honest about every other team, but if you got your
there.
teams, you got to defend your teams. Then it's not your team.
Listen,
They're still my team.
Greg, I think you're doing great. I think you're doing great. And I think since I'm not there, just kind of in absentia, you today, Mr. Consistency.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
I see no inconsistency in your take whatsoever. I love it.
Means a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, look.
Okay. There's a lot of confusion here, and let's talk about it. Let me get up the stats for CJ Stroud. Hold on. Let me get this real fast. There we go. Okay. I talked about this a little bit in the when I did the whole, all the tiers as a whole, but I really wanted to isolate this because this did not sit right with me at all, because I feel like unless you really are watching the Houston Texans, you're going to think that CJ Stroud is a problem, that he's going down, and that's just not the case. Dan Orlovsky has unpacked this much better than I ever could, and I actually did one of his clips like weeks ago, talking about how CJ Stroud is playing awesome. He even slated as CJ Stroud as an MVP. This was before the New York Jets game that really things got, exceptionally ugly. But, what CJ Stroud has had to overcome and how he's been able to hide a lot of the deficits for the Houston Texans and overcome that, I mean, it can't be understated. And this is where it's not fair, because even if we were just looking at those numbers in isolation and not knowing anything about 2023, those numbers are still pretty good. They're not amazing. They're not earth-shattering by no means, right? I'm not looking at those numbers and saying, well, that's a Hall of Fame quarterback, right? I'm not saying that either, but they're not trash, okay? They're not trash, and we know that his offensive line is awful. His run game, was in and out of the lineup. He's had significant injuries to his major targets. He's got no one to throw to, no one to work with. He has a young coordinator who I'm actually a fan of, but is clearly has not been adaptable enough, especially with injuries, right? Especially with considering the deficits that this team has right now. He has not been good at helping overcome those situations, which I've also defended him, though, because I don't want to just say, oh, Bobby Slowick's awful, because, again, he's a younger coordinator. It makes his job significantly harder, and quite frankly, seasoned veteran coaches can struggle with some of those things, so I'm just not going to expect someone to be able to just find a way all the time. It's significantly easier said than done. But despite all of that, look, okay, CJ Stroud is ranked 14th right now, according to PFF. And so again, if we're just going to use pure statistics, well then just let's use pure statistics. You guys know, as I always say, anytime I reference stats, I don't live and die by stats, but if we're going to use statistics as a reference point, well, fine, then let's have at it, okay? Because he's ranked 14th right now, which is really not awful considering his team. But before week 9, he was the 7th best quarterback, according to PFF, okay? So let's be serious here. Considering his circumstances, that's pretty good statistically. Considering all of the things that have happened for him. Considering he has the worst O-line in football, that is pretty impressive. That is pretty impressive because we talk about how Matthew Stafford, who again I think is a great quarterback, he lost his weapons and his O-line was injured. And, Stafford's all the way... I can't even find Stafford right now. Where is he? Oh, there you go. 25th. Okay? At the way bottom. So, let's be clear about what we're looking at here. I mean, it's just not fully fair to kind of come after him. And not to mention, even with that all said, when you look at some more advanced passing stats, if I can get to it. Where is it? We can look at accuracy, and with an awful O-line, CJ Stroud is still at 75%, okay? Which is really, really impressive, right? Considering what he's being asked to do, right? People talk about how someone like Dak Prescott, let me go back to that, doesn't have an O-line, and that's why he's bad and doesn't have weapons, etc. Look at this guy. His accuracy rate drops all the way down to 71%. Okay, so I just don't think it's fair to pile on to CJ Stroud, to even imply that CJ Stroud is part of the problem here, because I know Greg is saying CJ Stroud is not all to blame, but to then use these stats, right, to use it as a reference point, it's just not. CJ Stroud's not holding this team back. He's not holding this team back. I mean that's just it's an insane reference point to use. It's just illogical. And so again, for people that are not actually watching the Houston Texans playing, maybe they're just kind of casually, maybe they just watch the game, right? Maybe they just watch whatever nationally televised game was on, so they watch the Texans versus the Jets and stuff like that, and then you see a clip like this, and you're like, oh yeah, CJ Stroud, he was really popular. Because I've already seen people say that in the comment section. Oh, CJ Stroud was amazing last season, and now look at him, right? And people were using that either ways to bring CJ down or to defend their other quarterback who was struggling, who maybe is missing some weapons or whatever. Chicago Bears fans were using CJ Stroud as a reference and stuff like that. And it's not the full picture, right? It's not the full picture. I think it's being, if you're not really watching these games, then you're getting a very limited view as to what CJ Stroud has been doing for the Texans. And again, the New York Jets game was definitely obviously exceptionally bad, which then now definitely pulls down his overall numbers even more. As you could see, he was 7th and then dropped all the way down to 14th, but that was obviously not the norm, right? That was clearly not the norm. And that game alone, I mean, he was just crushed with pressure. I mean, just absolutely endless. I mean, it was just all day, every day. So it's just like, I don't understand what you're going to expect, someone to do there. I really, really don't. I mean, how do you expect CJ Stroud to have 0 weapons and to be able to survive that? You just simply cannot. He was 24th, 47, right? Like, that's obviously exceptionally bad. And if we go here to Where is it? Dropbacks with pressure. He was at the top. He was number 1 in the league. Number 1 in the league for pressure. 25. It's like, what do you want him to do? He was sacked 8 times. He had to scramble 7, which was also leading. So it's just like he was running for his life. He's got nobody to throw to, right? It's one thing if he was running for his life, but he still had some weapons to throw to. He had no one to throw to. It's like, what do you want him to do, right? That's where Jalen Hurts at least can thrive, right? He could be hounded, but he still has AJ to work to. He still has Saquon, Devontae, right? Like he has some weapons. He also has a more experienced OC at this point, Kellen Moore. Because also when you're getting pressured that much and you're getting blitzed that much, and this was the argument that I made for Jalen Hurts actually this offseason going into this season, because everyone was like, oh, he's bad against the blitz. He's bad against the blitz. Now he's awesome against the blitz, right? Because when you're bad against the blitz, so much of that is on your offensive coordinator, offensive head coach to set you up, right? They got to set you up to be able to get the ball out quickly. They got to have these quick read options for you to be able to just get the ball out. It's so much more on the coordinator rather than the quarterback. Of course, sometimes it's on the quarterback if they just truly can't pick up the blitz, handle it, make decisions that quickly. But that's not the case for CJ, right? It's very obvious that that's not the case, just like it was very obvious to me that that wasn't the case for Jalen Hurts either, right? More often than not, it's a coordinating issue, right? Or just technically, I guess, personnel, but more coordinating, then personnel, then quarterback, right? Then quarterback. When you see a quarterback who gets blitzed and he automatically like runs out of the pocket and scrambles and goes like crazy, right? Then we can be like, well, that's a quarterback issue, right? Or they have that option, that quick read to be able to spit the ball out, and they just keep missing it, or they throw it at their feet or launch it over their head. That's a quarterback issue. That's not what's happening. He just fundamentally has nowhere to go with the ball. Again, just like Jalen Hurts last year. Now look at Jalen Hurts this year. Night and day. So I want to highlight that. This right here to like as a reference point as to why the Texans are going down. Not on my watch. Not on my watch. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Houston Texans sliding down according to Greg and CJ Stroud's 2023 year to 2024? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.